So, little technical difficulties, folks, here, but so excited to have here at the continuing winemaker series at the Wine of the Month Club, Tawnya Falkner from Le Grand Courtâge, because she was here last week, tasted her wines. In fact, you probably saw her wines in an email special we recently did. Gorgeous sparkling wines from, well, what district would you say it's from?
Burgundy,
From
produced in
Burgundy?
Neuilly St. George.
In Louis St. George. Oh, wow. So we're going to talk sparkling wines and, of course, the holidays and celebration. But I'm sure one of the subjects she's going to want to talk about is that sparkling wine is not just for holidays.
Indeed.
It's not just for celebrations. It's for actually consumption. all the
Breakfast
time.
to dessert.
Right, exactly. So anyway, this is, if you've ever had a dream to leave the country and do something else, you got to listen to this story because it's very interesting. So you were doing what, and you decided to do what?
I was living in San Francisco. My background is architecture and real estate development, and loved bubbles, drank a lot of them. Of course, was just outside of the Napa area, and I was surprised by how few people drank bubbles in the U.S. and started to see more and more, people were consuming it outside of the holidays, but still not enough, and started to do research, and ultimately, the more I researched, the more I saw an opportunity, and ultimately I took the leap, gave up my career, and moved to Burgundy to create this.
So you felt that people in America were drinking more bubbles, and your research proved that this might be a good idea, which I think it's a great idea, and you just took off to France. Did you know French then?
I didn't, and I'm still not fluent now, sadly. But ultimately, a lot of people say, well, why not Napa? Why would you go all the way to France?
Yes.
But in the U.S., the majority of Americans still say, I'm drinking champagne. Whether
That's
it's
true.
Cook's or Andre or Dom Perignon, it's still champagne. And so there's such an association of champagne in France, but champagne's so expensive. And so I really thought there was an opportunity to create an affordable, everyday luxury that has that French cachet, but is a little bit more modernized and geared towards the American palate. And, so I kind of saw a gap on price, palate, and packaging.
Wow, the three Ps.
The three
That's
Ps.
something else. Well, it's a very interesting concept for one. There's a lot of things that we could attack in this conversation or let's discuss. But for one, of course, there's the term champagne, which means sparkling wine from a specific district in France. Though when I stocked my dad's shelves in the 60s, 70s, we had Andre was called champagne back then, or Cold Duck too.
Yep.
I don't know why they call it Cold Duck. But a lot of American sparkling houses called their stuff champagne back then, just like you shouldn't use cognac and all the other brands, all the other district names. But California, I don't see the California lifestyle consuming a lot of champagne or a lot of sparkling wine yet, except recently in the last couple of years. One of the themes between having a conversation with Monsieur Tétanger and Monsieur Boulanger, or Monsieur Devervois from Bollinger, if you say it in English, was we want people to consume sparkling wine as part of the regular regiment of wine drinking.
Indeed.
Are you seeing that?
It still has a long way to go, but when I took the leap, sparkling was growing about double the rate of still wine. So, it's a small base, far fewer number of bottles, or cases consumed, but there was definitely a market increase in the consumption. Now it's growing 5 times faster on volume, and rosés are on fire, both sparkling rosé and still rosé, and so I think there's a shift. In France they call it the apéritif, and you definitely see it's often a daily drink, and I think we have a long way to go. We still very much associate weddings, New Year's, I got a raise, special occasion, but what the Americans, palate or consumer doesn't realize, it's really the most versatile of all wines. I joke about breakfast or dessert are socially acceptable before noon, but the acidity and the effervescence add such nice textural element, and whether it's greasy, fatty, fried, spicy, fried chicken, spicy
I would see
Asian,
that, right?
Outside of your oysters and caviar and the things that people
Absolutely,
talk about,
right.
It's really fun to experiment and try it with fried chicken. Like I think that's one of the best, or potato chips or popcorn. And so I'm about, you think about that, the concept of the joie de vivre, or the joy of life, as the French call it. It doesn't really get much better.
Joie de
vivre. Cheers.
So, I agree with that. And actually, at Thanksgiving, when we went to my wife's family's, and I'd already had these conversations with the champagne houses, I asked for a glass of champagne, which they were pouring a rosé when I got there. But when I went back for the second glass, he had opened a Dom. I'm like, well, I don't know if that's really, it's $200 bottle of wine.
Not quite what I was looking for.
Not for my wife's family. No kidding. That's a joke, okay?
Nor mine. They wouldn't appreciate it.
So this is the Blanc. It's we talked about the grape districts. And I don't remember what they are. Where they're from.
So I kind of broke all the rules. Le Grand Courtâge loosely means the grape courtship. So it's a little bit an association of, me as an American working with the French. It's blending grapes from different terroirs or regions, and it is kind of the old and new world style coming together. In France, it's very much about terroir. It's a Burgundy or it's a Bordeaux. They do blend, but as a general rule, they're very region specific. In the U.S., though, we often blend grapes for regions, and so I thought it was interesting to utilize some unique varietals. This is predominantly Chardonnay, and then it has some Uni Blanc and Colombard from Gers and Charente, more the Languedoc region, and then some Chenin Blanc. And so my goal was crisp, light, refreshing. You have baby bubbles, that hint of fruit and floral to offset the dryness, the yeast, the acidity. So it's a very balanced wine, kind of, that consumer friendly. Somebody says, I like a sweet wine, it has enough fruit floral to satisfy that. But conversely, if it's a champagne drink or somebody that likes a drier style, you have enough of that structure and
I think you've nailed that concept for sure.
Thank you.
An Uni Blanc, folks, just is the grape they use for cognac and distilled things. So you've got an incredible balance here. So where is it fermented? Do you ferment it in the south? Or you bring it up to
I bring all the grapes. I source the grapes. I don't own vineyards. I grew up in 3 Street Farm community in upstate New York. I have zero desire to ever grow anything.
Yeah,
I know that
okay.
it's a thankless job. So I source my grapes. I work with a producer in Burgundy. I do all of my production, fermentation, bottling in Neuilly St. George. So I kind of have the Burgundy pedigree without the champagne price tag.
Yeah, so the other night when I went home, I thought, I feel like a glass of wine, and I felt Burgundy, so I opened a bottle. I didn't really look at it as a Neuilly St. George. I looked it up. It was like $250 bottle of wine that I had. I didn't know. So I told my wife, I said, we're drinking this whole bottle. And
we're going to enjoy
my
every
daughter
drop
is
of it.
like, 10. No, I said, this is fabulous. And I think, I forgot the shelf price, but it's...
under 20,
which
typically,
is a great value.
$18.99. And my whole thing is, we kind of have 2 schools of thought of when it comes to bubbles. We've got the really cheap, bottomless mimosa crap or the weddings, New Year stuff that gives everyone the headache, or you have the very expensive champagne. And there is a lot in the middle, but it's not, usually consumers are gravitating to one or the other. And so I thought there was a unique opportunity to create something that's accessible. It's under 20, the ATM mentality. It's going to be affordable for every day, so they don't mind popping that cork. And I think universally when you travel, the cork, that pop is the sound that immediately resonates, puts a smile on people's face, and there's something about that, puts people in a good mood. It's sort of that celebratory nature. I think that comment I made about the joie de vivre, it really is a baguette, cheese, fruit, sitting around with friends on a Sunday afternoon. It doesn't get much better than that. It's not the 5-star meal and spending several $100s. It's the simplest things that really you delight.
You don't have to, and there's what's interesting about this is it's French, and to approach a French sparkling wine in this price range is unusual, unless it's being distressed of some kind, because we see a lot of Prosecco and Cavas in this price range, which typically they're not very good. They're bitter, particularly Cavas are very bitter generally. So this is a great expression of what you're trying to put together.
Thank you.
And the result of a dream. Is there a dream in here somewhere?
Well, in fact, on the back of every bottle, on the label and on the neck, and I don't know if I even pointed this out before.
I don't think you did.
It says, embrace life, dream big, accept all invitations.
Oh, there we go.
So really my personal philosophy is, you only get one chance at life. And I wasn't sure if I was going to fail or succeed. Heck, I still don't know if I'm going to fail or succeed.
It's a tough racket. We know that for sure.
But there's such a romance about wine, and food and wine are the great common denominators. What brings people together, and rich or poor, you break bread even if you can't speak the language. There's something that's so enticing about being part of this industry, and you've been in it for 30
years.
Plus years, and a lot of changes. But at the end of the day, it's sort of nice to be part of people's everyday happiness. And it's not about getting people drunk. It's about bringing people together at the table.
I didn't mean 30 years. I meant 30 years. So while we're here, I'm going to demonstrate, how to open a bottle of champagne properly, a sparkling wine, just because I see it happen so many times wrong, and we want to preserve the bubbles. These are not chilled; they should be chilled, and that because, like when you get a soda at a restaurant, the water should be 36 degrees because otherwise you lose the fizz. So that's why we chill, and these bubbles are trapped in the bottle, and they will escape if you let them. So anyway, first of all, the basket on top is on there because the atmospheric pressure inside the bottle is like, what, 12 or 14?
Yeah, high. So about the equivalent of 100 miles an hour, the cork coming out, and four car tires of pressure.
So we want to make sure that the cap. Now you'll open some Moscatos; they don't have that kind of pressure. It's like 3 or 4 atmospheres, so it's not a big deal. But in this case, you'll also should see 5 turns to the basket, which is the typical classic thing. And you don't need to take the basket off, but you need to grip it because you never know. If you remove your hand, that thing could just pop out. You don't know. You want to turn the bottom of the bottle and just gently rock it loose. Now, if you want it to pop, it's time to let it pop. If you don't want to lose too much gas, you just you sort of burp it at the end and just let it sort of escape quietly.
Perfect.
And that's the way you want to do it.
Interesting factoid. I once read that there's more deaths by champagne cork than there are sharks.
Okay, that's funny.
So, if you want to impress your friends with random knowledge.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, I was like 8 or 9. My dad was the president of the chamber in Inglewood here, and they were doing, I don't know why they opened champagne, but the guy shot through the plastic, the lighting fixture. So this is your rosé. What is the red grape in this?
So this is Chardonnay, Uni Blanc, and Gamay. So instead of Pinot Noir, I chose the Gamay. Very unusual. And I'd say this is more of a departure because often in sparkling rosés, they'll use a cognac or brandy in the dosage. So I find it's a little bit overpowering. There's almost that hint of off gas like you'll get in a big heavy red. So we solely use Gamay in the finish that lends to a lighter style. And the approach with both the Blanc de Blanc and the rosé was, something that's very balanced, very smooth, that kind of user friendly, that you've got the dryness and acidity as well as the fruit. And I think this allows some nice notes of strawberry, raspberry, lilac. Aromatics are not much sweeter than the taste actually is.
I get the lilac, strawberry. So I didn't think about I forgot to ask about the dosage here.
10 on the Blanc de Blanc and 11 to 12 on the rosé. So we push the kind of the upper limits of the Brut, but we're still, dry definitionally in the U.S. So many people are like, oh, I'll take the Brut, not realizing that actually does mean dry. So we're dry, but I think the Chenin Blanc in the first one and the Gamay in this create the perception of a lot more fruit than, a lot more RS or dosage than there actually is.
One of my favorite trivia questions of all wine. One is Monk. He wasn't really blind, but they contend he might have been blind. Who said, "I'm drinking stars when he drinks champagne?" Of course, Dom Perignon. And then, what's drier, Brut or extra dry?
Yeah, right. Totally confuse people.
And you would think that just the fact they asked the question, that it's a trick question, right? So it is Brut, which is the driest of the sparklings. So, but Gamay is an interesting grape because your Nuit Saint Georges is down that way, getting close to Gamay, the Gamay district. And I'm fascinated by Gamay wines right now. We've got to visit Cheryl Cerise at Chateau de Jacques down there, and had a great experience with him. And so many people think that Gamay Beaujolais is nouveau, and Georges Duboeuf, sort of set that stage. But man, what elegant and complex wines they can be in the grape itself. And
in years past, it was like, oh, it's always drunk cold, and that sort of turns people off. And so I think there's been a resurgence of Gamay and an interest in it. And I read an article recently where somms were surveyed. It's like, oh, what's some of the most underutilized grapes? And both Chenin and Gamay came up from several different somms. And I used those to achieve the palate profile that I was going for. But I think it's at first, when I launched, I felt like I had to apologize that I wasn't doing the quote standard 3 champagne grapes, which is Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier, which I never pronounced correctly. But I wanted to actually introduce some unique varietals and not do what everyone else was doing, so that you have a different talking point, that you're getting different nuances and styles that come through with the sparkling.
Now, there's like these stories. What's the name of the story of the family, the husband and wife that went to Tuscany, and they bought a house, and the whole movie about under the Tuscan sun.
Yep.
So are we under the Burgundy sun over there? What's going on?
Maybe one day.
You have a place to go to? No guest house I could go visit or anything like that?
Not yet. Maybe in a couple of years. I joked that I was permanently homeless for 2 years while I lived over there, and with Airbnb, VRBO, things like that. Right. It was sort of lovely because as we were sourcing different grapes and we traveled around and were able to really experience different regions of France. I just rent a maison when I'm there, and I never heard the adage that it takes a large fortune to make a small fortune in wine. Yes. I was well into it once I learned that. So
you want to make a large fortune in the wine business, small fortune in the wine business, start with a large one. So
or join a deal.
And I know you already know this, but even today, and I had 3 or 4 distributors in today for tasting, and that theme seems to be even more pertinent today in the way this industry is changing so rapidly, particularly from the DTC side. But it's interesting. It's a fabulous industry and fabulous. It's fun to be in, and I'm so happy you got a chance to pursue this. And I think you'll be successful with these brands. I think that there's nothing like persistence, right?
Tenacity gets you a long ways
in this business for sure.
Well, and I think you see so many brands come and go, and I've read some crazy stat that something like 93% of all the wines are controlled by 6 major companies, which is staggering.
Well, right. So Co-Brand and Diageo and those guys, they all have the big brands, right?
Yep. And they have huge sales teams, spend big dollars, and so the fact that we've gotten to where we are with not a lot of money and a small team, right. I feel like it's working, and I think with wine or just even consumers in general, there's a shift away from big box and big brands, and people like the romance and they want the story and they want to support the underdog. And so I think that actually, and you probably have seen that a lot in your history.
Tell me about this Très Chic.
So I was going to share one last thing on bubbles. He was mentioning Dom Perignon. We did a blind taste test at the Eiffel Tower. I don't know if I shared this with you.
Wow.
Where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get arrested or get in trouble, but I'm like, hey, even if I get arrested, that's a good story. But we set up, some of my French friends and I, we set up the table, white linen table and cloth, randomly went around and grabbed people that were picnicking at the Eiffel Tower. And if people haven't been there, it's kind of like Central Park in New York or Golden Gate Park. People just picnic and hang out, but you can drink in the park there. So we went and asked people if they'd like to try our wine. We have a well-known French champagne and a new French sparkling wine. Would you like to try it? Brown bag, completely hidden, much like the Prepsy Challenge.
Yeah.
You can look it up on YouTube. We did a blind taste test, ended up getting a 50-50 tie against Dom.
Wow, that's great.
And it was so successful, like, we'll do it, each time. And so the last time we did Cristal 05 and 78%.
Wow, it's an expensive test.
Right? And I was like, we should lose. But even if somebody preferred the vintage yeasty champagne, you can get 10 bottles of ours compared to one of theirs. And I think the inaccessibility of champagne is partly why people don't drink it as much in the U.S. too. And so, I wanted to be playful and try to show people it can be very
really funny,
laughable, and have fun with it.
So now the guys are walking around the area of the Eiffel Tower with buckets with ice in it, and they're selling bottles. I'm like, this is not Los Angeles, right? I mean, probably could do it. Who knows?
Entrepreneurialism in its
Maybe
finest.
It's coming, but I don't know. Well, it's just the standard really around LA is Veuve Clicquot, which at some point was in the 30s. Now it's, I think, over $40 a bottle, which is sort of the standard go-to, which I don't even care for. And having a chance to taste the Bollinger wines and the Tawnya wines that are at least in the same price range, but I think more sophisticated, more complex. This is a great opportunity to try bubbles. They're very fine. They feel good, and the character's balanced, and it doesn't jive with the rest of the yeasty, bread-like things.
A really sophisticated palate loves that yeasty, bready brioche.
I don't care.
But a lot of times that's an acquired taste, and so I say we're not as light and as sweet as a Prosecco, and we're not as dry and yeasty as a Champagne. I tried to hit that midpoint so that you're bringing more people into the category, and they're like, oh, this is interesting, and I love those different pairings. People have fun with it, right? Yep. All wine, it's meant to be enjoyed, and yes, there's a sophistication, and it can be very expensive, but at the end of the day, do you like it or not, and just have fun with it.
You know, there's this whole thing about the average price people are spending in America and for wine, and it's like $40, and I don't believe it because I make my living at 12.
Yep.
And so it's an interesting thing. But one of the things that I do tout, and this a lot of it's not tout, I explain to a lot of marketeers in this business. Okay, and you ask all your friends, or I ask all my friends, do you drink wine? And 99% are going to say yes, or 100, maybe 100%, maybe 90%. But if you ask the rest of the country, 100,000 people, 15% are going to say yes. So it's a very small market, and then now to say, hey, we want to get people drinking sparkling wines, which we've normally reserved for celebrations. I don't think it's a tall order, but I think it's a great order. I think it's something that we should be doing, and I've been doing it in my house since I've had these conversations about the sparkling realm. Tell me about this Très Chic Rosé, because we put this in the club, and it's fabulous. Where's it from?
Brand new. This is south of France, so it is not Provence, but it's right outside of the Provence confines. So this is Grenache and Cinsault, and similar in stylistically, where we wanted a nice, it has some tropical fruit notes, some red berry, a little bit of Meyer lemon, some thyme, rosemary that come through, and something that, you know, again, is kind of an everyday wine that is going to transition. Its retail is only about 17, and so wanted to create something that dispels the fact that rosé is a summer drink. Just like so many people think, you know, bubbles are a holiday or special occasion, rosé has been combined as a summer drink in the U.S. until recently. It's now on fire. It's nice to see the shift because in France it's the most widely consumed wine. And yeah, there's so much interest around it. And I call it a tweener wine. It's a step up from a white wine. You have a little bit more structure, but it's not as heavy as a red, so that you can transition either way. And something like for Thanksgiving is fantastic because you've got the sweet and savory and a lot of dishes and pairings, and so something that really can carry through with virtually anything.
I like the weight of this. You feel it on the tongue. It's the Grenache and the you said Syrah, Grenache, Syrah.
Grenache Cinsault.
Yeah, Cinsault. So you get a wonderful weight on the tongue, and you still get that wonderful. There's flowers in there, and I get all the spices that you're talking about. A gorgeous wine, and it's a departure from some of the stuff we taste. It's just sort of flowery and fruity, and this has a little more character to it that makes you feel like you're drinking a wine, which is great.
Well, and I think we both have an opportunity and even a responsibility. You're trying to bring people along on their wine journey. If somebody has always been a cheap, sweet white wine, it's like, well, if you like this, maybe try this wine. Or if you've always been a Sauv Blanc, try a Sancerre, and you're trying to not go so far a departure that you blow out people's palates and they're not used to it. But it's like if you can add a little more structure, complexity, nuance, then they're like, okay, I could do this because it's gradual. You don't go from here to here. Right. You have to, go along the way.
It takes a long time. I mean, my own palate journey, I'm fascinated now by biodynamic wines, Pinot Noir particularly. I love Pinot Noirs. You asked me 5 years ago, I would have, I like them. So it's great that it evolved. That's what we want it to happen. So we get a chance to learn them.
How often would you say your palate changes?
Oh, probably every 18 months or so that I start delving into trying to understand something else more frequently, though I have one obstacle. I have one obstacle, and that's Mrs. K, because she will not drink Syrah or Grenache. And so as much as I try to stump her with blends, she usually, she doesn't know what it is, but she gets there.
I don't like this. I still don't like it. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Pinot. I just got back from France on Thursday for ride for Thanksgiving, and Burgundy is very known for its Pinot Noir, and I've never been a Pinot Noir fan, and I don't care if it's the Northwest or it's Burgundy. Whatever. It's just not my thing, and you can't force yourself to like what's not your favorite. But I keep forcing myself to try because you're challenging your palate and being that addition. I'm like, okay, you know what? And even if I don't like something, like I hate mezcals, but I appreciate
that's what
what
you have
and
to
why,
learn to do.
And so you've got to force yourself to keep trying foods that you don't like or wines you don't like, because it does change and evolve. And
particularly with wine that we had Thanksgiving, and my friend was pouring. They only drink Napa cabs, they're big giant cabs, and I said, you need, and I brought the Nuit Saint Georges, and I said, you got to taste this. And one guy that's there gets wine, he is willing to test, and he's like freaking out. It was so great. And he goes, I don't know, it's too light. I go, light isn't even a word. And I put my arm around. I go, you've got to give everything a chance and understand what it's about. That's all I want to teach you is just give it a chance to understand. He goes, okay. I'm like shaking his head.
Well, and it is so true because most men would say, oh, I don't like sweet wines. And these big, heavy 14, 16% alcohol, they don't realize how much sugar content.
Right.
So when you go to a Burgundy or, frankly, most European wines, they are more subtle.
Yes.
Some will say elegant or nuanced.
Yes,
but
sure.
they feel almost flat when
Right.
you're used to. But you look at our coffees, even our milk has a high sugar content here comparative to Europe. And so we grow up with a very, very sweet palate. And so it takes, I think, a lot of training to move away from that.
It does.
And kind of
It takes an appreciation. The part that I'm getting now, and we'll wrap this up, but the part that I'm starting to get a keener understanding now is the terroir and the soil and where it's getting its flavors from, and that is fascinating. Even though I've been doing this for 30 years, maybe it's my ability to dissect it more, maybe it's my ability to just tasting these things, but Pinot is a conduit of its soil and its terroir, and that's what's fascinating to me, because you really can, and Gamay too, Gamay really pulls out of the soil what it's grown. So anyway, this has been fascinating to have you here, and I'm so glad you came back, Tawnya. It's been fun, and we all wish you success in the new venture. Well, it's not so new, but in your venture.
Still in its infancy.
And we do look forward to coming out to Bourgogne and visiting you at your chateau.
Yes, we'll have
Cheers.
invite everyone. Cheers.
Absolutely.
Happy holidays,
Cheers.
everyone.
Thank you.